Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Antitrust and Labor Law and the effect of those topics on professional sports. My name is Mark Conrad. I teach at the Quimbee School of Business at Fordham University, and this is next in a series of courses on various aspects of sports law. And this particular course will involve a curious interplay between two very distinct areas of law, antitrust and labor, and the profound effect that both of them have in the world of professional sports. So without further ado, let's move to the next slide. Some of you already may be familiar with this, but my background, but for those of you who are not, I teach and write about sports law and business. Full-time, I teach at Fordham Quimbee School of Business, where I also direct its sports business initiative. In addition, I serve as an adjunct professor at Columbia University's graduate program in sport management, and also as an adjunct professor at St. John's University's School of Law, also in New York. I have taught the subject of sports law, the subject of sports business, and also areas involving issues of ethics and diversity overall for the last quarter century. In addition, I also teach media law, and some of the media law issues do play out in sports, although not so much in this particular lecture. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about our learning goals. And this is really a primer on antitrust and professional sports. This is not to be taken for a detailed class in antitrust law or a detailed lecture on various aspects of that subject, because antitrust law is broad, it's a complex, it is very theoretical, it's economics based. So we're not going to get into that much of it in the space of 1 hour, but we certainly are going to get in terms of the issues of applicability and where and how antitrust plays a role in the professional sports structure. We'll discuss in conjunction with that what tests the courts do utilize in these cases because of the unique governance structure of professional sports. Then, more for the second half of the class, there'll be an introduction to labor law in sports and the intersection of labor and antitrust, focusing on something called the non-statutory labor exemption. We will finally wrap up with a summary of two of the major collective bargaining agreements in professional sports. That's the current one for Major League Baseball and the current NFL agreement too, and both of them, of course, with their respective players' associations. And the one thing that I will point out now, this is nowhere near a free market. Sometimes people want to spout off and saying, well, this is a free market and free agents get all this money. Well, in reality, it is a very structured and regulated market based on the unique aspects of professional sports and the advantages of this structure to the players' associations. Hence, they wouldn't have agreed to them if there was not some kind of advantage for them. So let's move on and start getting to the meat of the matter, and that's antitrust laws. And this is a little bit of an introduction for those of you who've never taken an antitrust law class in law school or practice in the area. Antitrust laws are laws that restrict anti-competitive practices in what are known as relevant markets. And I will discuss a little bit about relevant markets in a bit. So essentially, we're talking about competition law. And the irony is that in most of the world, antitrust laws are called competition laws. So those of you familiar with European laws and the European Economic Union, there is a strong anti-competition law there, and certainly that has had an effect on certain sports organizations in the EU countries. Now, that's not something we will discuss here today because it's a somewhat different topic, but nevertheless, some of the standards that have been utilized there do come from the United States, because the United States does have some of the oldest the competition laws or antitrust laws, depending how you call it. From now on, we of course are going to refer to these laws as antitrust laws. So that's the idea behind it. So antitrust laws basically prohibit agreements that restrain trade. They also prohibit what are called monopolistic practices. And that's something I'll go through very quickly because it's not that relevant to sports, as we will see. Antitrust laws do not apply to labor agreements. So the labor process and the labor management negotiations are generally not subject to antitrust enforcement. And that is because of public policy reasons. And professional sports pose unique antitrust issues because of the structure of the traditional leagues in the United States.